In a world where royal protocol dictates every gesture and cameras capture every glance, there are rare moments when humanity breaks through the carefully constructed facade. On a gray February morning in 2024, as millions watched from around the globe, Prince William stood beside his wife Catherine outside a London hospital. The announcement they were about to make would change everything the public thought they knew about strength, vulnerability, and what it truly means to face life's greatest challenges together. What happened in those 30 seconds of silence before Catherine spoke will become one of the most powerful moments in modern royal history. No choreographed speeches, no carefully planned gestures, just two people holding onto each other as their world shifted beneath their feet. The image of William's trembling hand finding Catherine's and her barely perceptible nod of acknowledgement would be replayed countless times across every news channel, social media platform, and newspaper front page. But this story isn't just about a moment caught on camera. It's about what led to that moment, what happened in the days and weeks that followed, and how a couple's private struggle became a beacon of hope for millions facing their own impossible battles. This is the story of how silence spoke louder than any words ever could, and how love proved stronger than fear when everything seemed lost. The morning started like any other Tuesday in the Wales household. Catherine was in the kitchen, making breakfast for George, Charlotte, and Louis, while William reviewed his schedule for the day. The children's laughter echoed through their Adelaide cottage home as they prepared for another ordinary school day. Nobody could have predicted that within hours, their entire world would be turned upside down. Catherine had been feeling tired for weeks, but she attributed it to her busy schedule of royal engagements and managing 3 active children. As the Princess of Wales, she was used to pushing through fatigue and maintaining her composure under pressure. But this exhaustion felt different somehow, deeper, and more persistent than anything she had experienced before. It was during a routine doctor's appointment, scheduled weeks earlier for what seemed like a minor concern, that everything changed. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Catherine's longtime physician, had noticed some concerning symptoms during a previous consultation. What was supposed to be a quick follow-up turned into a series of tests, each one more serious than the last. William was in a meeting with his environmental team when his phone buzzed with an urgent message from Catherine. The text was simple but chilling. "Can you come to the hospital now? I need you here." He had never seen those words from his wife before. Catherine was the strong one, the one who handled crises with grace and never asked for help unless absolutely necessary. The drive to the hospital felt endless. William's mind raced with possibilities, each scenario worse than the last. He tried calling Catherine, but her phone went straight to voicemail. The security detail accompanying him noticed his white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, but they remained silent, understanding the gravity of the situation without needing explanation. When William arrived at the private wing of the London hospital, he found Catherine sitting in a small consultation room, staring out the window. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than he had ever seen her. Dr. Mitchell was reviewing charts at her desk, her expression serious and professional. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Catherine said softly, reaching for William's hand as he sat beside her. Her fingers were ice cold, and he noticed they were trembling slightly. Dr. Mitchell cleared her throat gently. "Your Highnesses, I'm afraid I have some difficult news to share with you today." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. "The test results have confirmed our concerns. Catherine, you have been diagnosed with a form of cancer that will require immediate and aggressive treatment." The silence that followed was deafening. William felt the world stop moving around him. He had faced many challenges in his life: the loss of his mother, the pressures of royal duty, the constant scrutiny of the media. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He looked at Catherine, whose face had gone pale, and saw his own fear reflected in her eyes. "What kind of cancer?" William managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Mitchell explained the diagnosis in detail, using medical terms that seemed foreign and frightening. She spoke about treatment options, survival rates, and the importance of starting therapy as soon as possible. Catherine listened intently, asking practical questions about timelines and procedures, but William could see the shock in her expression. "How long have I had this?" Catherine asked quietly. "It's impossible to say exactly," Dr. Mitchell replied. "These things can develop over time, often without obvious symptoms until they reach a certain stage. The important thing now is that we caught it and we have excellent treatment options available." William squeezed Catherine's hand tighter. "What do we do now?" he asked. The doctor outlined a comprehensive treatment plan that would begin within days. Surgery would be required, followed by chemotherapy and possibly radiation therapy. The entire process could take months, and there would be side effects and challenges along the way. "I want to be completely honest with you both," Dr. Mitchell continued. "This will be difficult. There will be good days and bad days. But I want you to know that we have every reason to be optimistic about Catherine's prognosis. With proper treatment, many patients with this diagnosis go on to live full, healthy lives." After the doctor left them alone to process the information, William and Catherine sat in silence for what felt like hours. The weight of the diagnosis settled over them like a heavy blanket. They thought about their children, their royal duties, and the public scrutiny that would inevitably follow once the news became public. "I'm scared," Catherine admitted finally, the first time William had ever heard her say those words. "So am I," he replied, pulling her closer. "But we're going to get through this together. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we're going to fight this." Catherine nodded, tears beginning to flow freely for the first time since receiving the news. "What about the children? How do we tell them?" It was a question that would haunt them both in the days to come. George, at 11, was old enough to understand the seriousness of the situation, but Charlotte and Louis were still so young. They had always tried to protect their children from the harsher realities of royal life, but this was something they couldn't shield them from. "We'll figure it out," William said, though he had no idea how they would find the right words. "We'll talk to the counselors, get advice from the doctors. We'll do whatever is best for them." As they prepared to leave the hospital that day, Catherine stopped at the window overlooking the busy London street below. People were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that the future Queen of England had just received news that would change everything. "Look at them all," she said softly. "They have no idea what just happened in this room." William joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we can give them a little more time before their world changes too." The drive home was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. They had decisions to make about treatment, about public announcements, about how to manage their royal duties while dealing with something so personal and frightening. That evening, after the children were in bed, William and Catherine sat together in their living room, holding each other as they tried to process the magnitude of what lay ahead. They talked about practical matters, who needed to be informed, how to adjust their schedules, what kind of support they would need. But mostly, they just held each other, finding comfort in the simple act of being together in the face of an uncertain future. Neither of them slept much that night, and when they did drift off, they were awakened by the sound of their children's laughter from down the hall, a reminder of everything they were fighting for. The next morning would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and the beginning of a journey neither of them had ever imagined they would have to take. But for now, in the quiet of their home, they had each other, and that was enough to begin facing whatever came next. The week following Catherine's diagnosis became a blur of medical appointments, family meetings, and the most difficult conversations of their lives. William had taken immediate leave from his official duties, telling his staff only that there was a family emergency requiring his full attention. The speculation began almost immediately, but the palace remained silent, buying them precious time to figure out their next steps. Their first priority was telling the children. Dr. Rachel Thomas, a specialist in family counseling during medical crises, came to Adelaide Cottage on Thursday morning to help them navigate what felt like an impossible conversation. She was a gentle woman in her 50s who had helped countless families deliver devastating news to young children. The key, Dr. Thomas explained to William and Catherine before the children woke up, is to be honest but age-appropriate. Children can sense when something is wrong, and if they don't get truthful information from you, they'll create their own explanations, which are often much worse than reality. George was the first to join them in the sitting room, still wearing his school uniform, but clearly aware that this wasn't a normal Thursday morning. At 11, he had his father's serious demeanor and his mother's intuitive understanding of people. He took one look at the adults gathered in their living room and knew something significant was happening. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" he asked directly, a question that caught both parents off guard. "No, sweetheart," Catherine said quickly, reaching for his hand. "Daddy and I love each other very much. This is about something else." Charlotte and Louis joined them moments later, sensing the gravity of the situation even at their young ages. Charlotte, 9 years old and remarkably perceptive, immediately went to her mother's side. 6-year-old Louis, still sleepy and confused, climbed into William's lap without understanding why everyone looked so serious. "We need to tell you something important," Catherine began, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "I have to go to the doctors for some special treatment, because I'm not feeling well. Like when I had to go to hospital when I broke my arm?" Charlotte asked, remembering her own medical experience from the previous year. "Similar, but different," William explained carefully. "Mummy has something called cancer, which means some cells in her body aren't working the way they should. The doctors are going to help fix it, but it will take some time." George's expression immediately became more serious. He had heard the word cancer before, and, unlike his younger siblings, he understood its implications. "Is Mummy going to die?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Catherine and William exchanged a glance, and Dr. Thomas nodded encouragingly, reminding them that direct questions deserved honest answers. "The doctors believe that with the right treatment, Mummy will get better," Catherine said, choosing her words carefully. "But yes, I'm sick, and I will need to spend time in the hospital and getting medicine that might make me very tired." Louis looked up at his father with wide eyes. "Will your hair fall out like in the movies?" Dr. Thomas had prepared them for this question. "It might," Catherine answered honestly. "Some of the medicine I have to take might make my hair fall out for a while, but it will grow back." The conversations continued for over an hour, with each child processing the information differently. George became quiet and thoughtful, asking technical questions about treatments and timelines. Charlotte wanted to know how she could help and whether she could come to the hospital visits. Louis, struggling to understand the abstract concept of illness, mostly wanted reassurance that his routine wouldn't change too dramatically. "The most important thing," William told them all, "is that we're going to be together through all of this. Mummy is going to fight this sickness with the best doctors in the world, and we're all going to help her." After the children went to school that day, a decision they made to maintain as much normalcy as possible, William and Catherine faced their next challenge, telling their immediate family. The call to King Charles was particularly difficult. Charles had been through his own health challenges, and the irony wasn't lost on any of them that the royal family was facing yet another medical crisis. His voice broke when Catherine told him the news, and for several moments, they all sat in silence on the phone. "My dear girl," Charles finally said, "you know you have our complete support. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, we'll be there." Telling Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, was equally heart-wrenching. They had always been incredibly close to their daughter, and the news hit them like a physical blow. Carol immediately offered to move in with them to help with the children, an offer that Catherine and William gratefully accepted. "I don't understand," Carol said through tears during their video call. "She's always been so healthy, so strong." Michael, typically more reserved with his emotions, struggled to speak. "What do you need from us?" he finally asked. "Anything at all." The conversation with Harry was complicated by the ongoing tensions within the family, but Catherine's illness seemed to put everything else into perspective. Despite their differences, Harry's concern for Catherine was immediate and genuine. "I'm coming home," he said without hesitation when William called him. "You don't have to." William began. Yes, I do, Harry interrupted. She's family. The kids are my niece and nephews. I'm coming home. As the week progressed, Catherine began the first round of treatments, while William juggled coordinating her care with managing their family life. The children's schools were quietly informed about the situation, ensuring that teachers would be alert to any changes in behavior or emotional needs. The hardest part was watching Catherine's strength fluctuate. Some days, she seemed almost like her old self, laughing with the children and maintaining her usual energy. Other days, the weight of the diagnosis and the early effects of treatment left her exhausted and emotional. One evening, as Catherine was resting after a particularly difficult day of tests and consultations, William found George sitting alone in the garden, throwing stones at the pond. "Everything all right, buddy?" William asked, settling down beside his eldest son. "I heard you and Mum talking last night," George said quietly, "about percentages and survival rates." William's heart sank. They had tried so hard to keep the more frightening details away from the children, but George was growing up faster than they realized. "What did you hear?" William asked gently. "Enough to know it's serious," George replied. "Mum could die, couldn't she?" William struggled with how to answer. Dr. Thomas had emphasized the importance of honesty, but he also wanted to protect his son from the full weight of adult fears and uncertainties. "The doctors are very optimistic about Mummy's treatment," William said carefully. "But you're right that this is serious, and it's natural to be scared." George nodded, continuing to throw stones. "I've been thinking about Grandmama Diana," he said. "How she died when you were young. I don't want that to happen to Mum." The comparison hit William like a physical blow. The parallel between his own childhood loss and his son's current fears was something he hadn't fully considered until that moment. "I understand why you would think about that," William said, wrapping his arm around George's shoulders. "But this is different. Diana's situation was sudden and unexpected. With Mummy, we caught the illness early, and we have time to fight it properly." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ducks swim across the pond. Finally, George spoke again. "I want to help," he said. "I'm not a little kid anymore. I want to do something real to help Mummy get better." William realized in that moment that his eldest son was indeed growing up, and that perhaps including him in age-appropriate ways might be better than trying to shield him completely. "What did you have in mind?" William asked. "I want to learn about her treatment," George said. "I want to understand what the doctors are doing so I can help explain things to Charlotte and Louis. And I want to help take care of them when Mummy isn't feeling well." The maturity in George's request was both heartbreaking and inspiring. William saw glimpses of the man his son would become, and despite the circumstances, he felt proud of the character George was displaying. That night, after all the children were asleep, William and Catherine sat together planning how to move forward. They had made the decision to be as transparent as possible with the public when the time came, but they wanted to control the narrative and timing. "I keep thinking about all the families going through this same thing," Catherine said, curled up against William's chest. "All the people who don't have access to the best doctors, or who have to worry about paying for treatment, or who don't have the support system we have. What are you thinking?" William asked, recognizing the tone in her voice that usually preceded one of her charitable initiatives. "I'm thinking that maybe this experience can help other people somehow. Maybe we can use this platform to make a difference for families dealing with cancer." William marveled at his wife's ability to think about others, even while facing her own crisis. It was one of the qualities that had made him fall in love with her years ago, and it was what would help them get through the challenges ahead. As they prepared for the public announcement they would have to make soon, they held on to each other and the strength they found in their family, their love, and their shared determination to face whatever came next together. 3 weeks after the diagnosis, the time had come to face the world. Despite their best efforts to maintain privacy, rumors were beginning to circulate. Catherine's absence from scheduled engagements hadn't gone unnoticed, and the tabloids were starting to publish increasingly invasive speculation about her health and whereabouts. The Palace Communications team, led by director Sarah Williams, had been working around the clock to prepare for the announcement. Every word of Catherine's statement had been carefully crafted, reviewed by legal teams, medical advisors, and communications experts. But no amount of preparation could have equipped them for the emotional reality of the moment they were about to face. On the morning of the announcement, Catherine woke early, unable to sleep. She stood at the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The stress of the past few weeks was visible in the slight hollowness of her cheeks and the faint circles under her eyes. But she was determined to appear strong for the cameras and for the millions of people who would be watching. William found her there, already dressed in a simple but elegant navy dress, a color choice that was both calming and authoritative. She was practicing her opening lines, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. "You don't have to be perfect," he reminded her, coming up behind her and placing his hands on her shoulders. "You just have to be you." "I know," she replied, leaning back against him. "I just keep thinking about all the people who are going to watch this. The families dealing with cancer, the children who might be scared by the news, our own children's friends and classmates." The weight of responsibility she felt was enormous. As the future queen, Catherine knew that her words would be analyzed, quoted, and remembered. But more than that, she understood that her courage in this moment could inspire others facing similar battles. The children had already left for school, a deliberate decision to maintain their normal routine. They knew about the announcement and had each given their mother hugs and words of encouragement before leaving. Charlotte had whispered, "Tell everyone that you're the strongest person I know," while Louis had simply said, "Make sure they know you're going to be okay, Mummy." George, with the seriousness that had become his trademark since learning about his mother's illness, had pulled William aside before leaving. "Take care of her today," he said quietly. "She's trying to be brave for everyone else, but she needs you to be brave for her." The wisdom in his 11-year-old son's observation struck William deeply. George had been watching and learning, understanding dynamics that many adults might miss. The announcement was scheduled for 11 o'clock from the steps of the London Medical Center, where Catherine was receiving treatment. The location was chosen deliberately. It wasn't a royal residence or official government building, but rather the place where hope and healing were happening. As they arrived at the hospital, the scene was overwhelming. Hundreds of media representatives lined the street, cameras and microphones creating a forest of technology focused on capturing every moment. Security barriers held back crowds of well-wishers who had gathered spontaneously, many holding flowers and homemade signs. "Princess Catherine, we love you," someone shouted from the crowd. "Stay strong," called another voice. The outpouring of support was immediate and genuine, but it also added pressure to an already intense situation. Catherine squeezed William's hand as they walked through the hospital corridors toward the designated area for the announcement. Dr. Sarah Mitchell met them just before they reached the entrance. "How are you feeling?" she asked Catherine with genuine concern. "Terrified," Catherine admitted honestly. "But ready?" "Remember," Dr. Mitchell said, "you're not just a patient today. You're a teacher. You're showing millions of people what courage looks like." The final moments before stepping outside were filled with last-minute adjustments, makeup touch-ups, checking the microphone levels, and reviewing the prepared statement one final time. Sarah Williams gave them a brief update on the media presence and reminded them of the planned timeline. "We expect global coverage," she explained. "This will be broadcast live on every major network and streaming platform." The statement Catherine prepared is approximately 3 minutes long, and we've arranged for no questions afterward. As they approached the doors leading to the announcement area, Catherine paused. "I can't do this," she said quietly, panic suddenly, overwhelming her careful composure. William stopped immediately, turning to face her. The hallway around them seemed to fade away as he focused entirely on his wife's face. "Yes, you can," he said firmly but gently. "You've already survived the hardest part. This is just telling people what you've already lived through." "What if I break down?" she asked. "What if I can't get through it?" "Then you break down," William replied, "and we'll get through it together. The people watching will understand. They'll love you even more for being human." It was in that moment, still inside the hospital, but visible through the glass doors to some of the cameras outside, that something magical happened. Catherine looked into William's eyes and saw not just her husband, but her anchor, her partner, her fellow warrior in this battle. Without saying a word, she stepped closer to him, and he wrapped his arms around her. The embrace lasted only seconds, but photographers captured it from every possible angle. It was raw, unguarded, and completely authentic. In that moment, they weren't the Prince and Princess of Wales. They were simply two people facing the unknown together, drawing strength from each other. When they separated, Catherine's composure had returned, but something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it was now balanced by determination and the knowledge that she wasn't alone. "Ready?" William asked. "Ready," she replied. They stepped outside together, walking hand in hand to the small podium that had been set up on the hospital steps. The noise from the crowd and media was overwhelming at first, but it gradually quieted as people realized the significance of what they were about to witness. Catherine approached the microphone while William stood slightly behind her, close enough to provide support, but far enough away to let her have her moment. The morning sun cast a gentle light across the scene, and for a moment, everything was perfectly still. She looked out at the sea of faces, reporters, hospital staff, supporters who had gathered to show their love, and took a deep breath. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I want to speak to you directly about some personal news that William and I need to share." The words that followed were carefully chosen, but delivered with genuine emotion. Catherine spoke about the diagnosis, the treatment plan, and her determination to fight the illness with everything she had. She talked about the support of her family, the excellence of her medical team, and her gratitude for the privacy that had allowed them to process the news before sharing it publicly. But it was the unscripted moments that captured hearts around the world. When her voice caught slightly as she mentioned her children, when she paused to gather herself before discussing the uncertain road ahead, when she looked directly into the cameras and spoke to other families facing similar challenges. To anyone watching who is dealing with cancer, whether as a patient or as someone who loves a patient, I want you to know that you are not alone, she said, departing from her prepared text. This journey is frightening and uncertain, but it is also filled with hope, love, and the incredible strength that comes from the support of others. William watched his wife with a mixture of pride and love that was visible to everyone present. When she finished speaking and stepped back from the microphone, he was there immediately, his hand finding hers without hesitation. But it was what happened next that became the image replayed around the world countless times. As they turned to walk back into the hospital, Catherine stumbled slightly, her composure finally beginning to crack under the weight of what she had just accomplished. William's response was instantaneous and instinctive. His arm went around her waist, steadying her, while his free hand covered their joined hands protectively. For just a moment, Catherine leaned into him completely, allowing herself to accept his strength when her own was depleted. The gesture lasted perhaps 5 seconds, but it was captured by dozens of cameras from multiple angles. The images would later appear on magazine covers, newspaper front pages, and social media feeds around the globe. But more than that, it became a symbol of partnership, love, and the kind of support that carries people through life's most difficult moments. Inside the hospital, away from the cameras, Catherine finally allowed the tears to come. "I did it," she whispered against William's chest. "You were magnificent," he replied, holding her tightly. "Absolutely magnificent." Within hours, the response from around the world was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from world leaders, celebrities, and ordinary people who had been moved by Catherine's courage and honesty. Social media was flooded with heart emojis, prayer hands, and personal stories from others who had fought similar battles. The hashtag no words needed began trending globally, referring to that moment when William's actions spoke louder than any statement could have. People share their own photos of supporting loved ones through difficult times, creating a virtual community of strength and solidarity. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from a young girl named Emma, age 8, who was undergoing treatment at a children's hospital in Manchester. She sent a drawing to Catherine showing two stick figures holding hands with the words "being brave together" written in crayon across the top. That drawing, which Catherine would keep on her nightstand throughout her treatment, reminded her that her moment of vulnerability had become a source of strength for others. In showing the world that even princesses needed support, she had given permission for everyone to accept help when they needed it most. As they drove home that evening, past the flowers and well wishes that had been left at the palace gates, Catherine and William reflected on the day that had changed everything. "Do you regret it?" William asked. "Going public the way we did?" Catherine considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "I think people needed to see that it's okay to be scared and still be strong. They needed to see that love doesn't make us weak. It makes us brave enough to face anything." The hardest part was over, but the real battle was just beginning. At least now, they would face it not in isolation, but surrounded by the love and support of millions of people around the world who have been touched by their courage and authenticity. The weeks following the public announcement brought both challenges and unexpected blessings. Catherine's treatment schedule was demanding and exhausting, but the global response to her courage had created something beautiful, a community of hope that extended far beyond the walls of the palace. Letters and packages arrived daily from around the world. Children sent handmade cards with misspelled words of encouragement. Cancer survivors shared their own stories of triumph. Families dealing with illness found comfort in knowing that even royalty faced the same fears and uncertainties they did. Emma's drawing wasn't the only artwork Catherine received. An entire wall in her private study became a gallery of hope, decorated with drawings, paintings, and photographs from people whose lives had been touched by her openness. Each piece represented someone who had found courage in her example. William had initially worried about the public scrutiny that would come with their decision to be transparent, but he quickly realized that the support was genuine and healing for Catherine. On difficult days when the treatment left her weak and discouraged, she would look at the messages and artwork, reminding herself that her struggle was helping others find strength. The treatment itself was brutal but manageable. Catherine approached it with the same methodical determination she brought to all her royal duties. She scheduled chemotherapy sessions around the children's school events when possible, attended virtual meetings from the hospital during infusion days, and maintained as much normalcy as she could manage. George had indeed become the helper he had promised to be. At 11, he had developed an impressive understanding of his mother's treatment schedule and side effects. He made sure Charlotte and Louis understood when Mummy needed extra rest, organized quiet activities for days when she felt sick, and even learned to make her favorite ginger tea for nausea. "You're like a little doctor," Catherine told him one afternoon as he brought her tea and crackers without being asked. "I'm just doing what Dad does," George replied matter-of-factly. "Taking care of the people we love." William's role had evolved dramatically. In addition to his royal duties, which he had gradually resumed with modified schedules, he had become Catherine's primary advocate and caregiver. He attended every medical appointment, learned to recognize the signs of good and bad days, and became expert at providing comfort without making Catherine feel fragile. The most challenging moments came during the second month of treatment, when Catherine lost her hair. She had prepared for it mentally, but the emotional impact was still devastating. The morning she woke to find clumps of hair on her pillow, she locked herself in the bathroom and cried for the first time since the initial diagnosis. William found her there 20 minutes later, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "I don't recognize myself," she whispered. Without saying a word, William picked up the electric razor from the counter. Catherine had bought it the week before in preparation for this moment, and plugged it in. "May I?" he asked gently. Catherine nodded, tears still flowing. William began carefully shaving away the remaining patches of hair, his movements gentle and reverent. When he finished, he removed his own shirt and handed it to Catherine. "Wear this today," he said. "So when you look in the mirror, you'll remember that you're not alone." The image of Catherine in William's oversized shirt, her newly bald head held high, became one of her strongest memories from the entire treatment period. Not because she looked beautiful, though William assured her she did, but because she realized that love truly could transform even the most difficult moments. 3 months into treatment, Catherine received news that would change everything again. Dr. Mitchell called them to the hospital for what they assumed was a routine checkup, but her expression when they arrived suggested something more significant. "The scans show remarkable improvement," she announced with barely contained excitement. "The tumor has shrunk by 70%, and we're seeing no signs of spread to other areas." Catherine and William sat in stunned silence for a moment. After months of uncertainty and fear, the word improvement seemed almost too good to believe. "What does this mean?" William asked carefully. "It means the treatment is working exceptionally well," Dr. Mitchell explained. "Better than we had hoped at this stage. If this progress continues, we'll be looking at a very positive long-term prognosis." The drive home that day was filled with a different kind of silence than they had experienced in months. Instead of worry and fear, they felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. That evening, they gathered the children in the living room for another family meeting. But this time, Catherine's expression was radiant as she shared the good news. "The doctors say the medicine is working really well," she told them, unable to hide her smile. "The sickness is getting smaller and weaker." Lewis jumped up immediately. "Does that mean you're not sick anymore?" "I'm still sick," Catherine explained, "but I'm getting better, and that's the most important thing." Charlotte, ever practical, asked, "When will your hair grow back?" "Hopefully soon," Catherine laughed, running her hand over her still bald head. "Although I might try some different styles this time." George, who had been quietly absorbing the news, finally spoke. "So we won't lose you?" The question broke Catherine's heart and filled it simultaneously. "No, sweetheart, you're not going to lose me. I'm going to be here for a very long time." The family celebration that night was simple but profound. They ordered pizza, watched a movie together, and for the first time in months, talked about future plans, summer holidays, birthday parties, and ordinary things that had seemed impossible to imagine just hours before. The public response to the positive health update was immediate and joyful. The same communities that had rallied around Catherine during her darkest moments now celebrated her progress as their own victory. Strangers had invested emotionally in her recovery, and her success gave hope to countless others facing similar battles. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came from an unexpected source. Emma, the 8-year-old girl from Manchester who had sent the first drawing, requested a video call through the children's hospital where she was receiving her own treatment. When Catherine's face appeared on the screen in Emma's hospital room, both were wearing colorful headscarves. Emma because she was still in treatment, Catherine because she wanted to match her new friend. "I wanted you to know," Emma said with the serious tone of someone much older, "that you helped me be brave. When I was scared about my treatments, my mom showed me the pictures of you and Prince William holding hands, and I remembered that being brave doesn't mean not being scared." Catherine struggled to maintain her composure. "You helped me be brave too," she replied honestly. "Your drawing is next to my bed, and I look at it every morning to remember why fighting is worth it." They talked for 20 minutes about everything from favorite colors to best foods to eat when feeling sick from treatment. When they said goodbye, Emma made Catherine promise to send a picture when her hair grew back. "And you promised to send me one when you're all better," Catherine replied. 6 months later, they exchanged those photographs, both showing 2 girls with short, fuzzy hair and enormous smiles, representing triumph over fear and illness. The final phase of Catherine's treatment occurred during the autumn, as the leaves were changing colors around their home. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them: transformation, renewal, and the natural cycle of death and rebirth that surrounded them. By November, Dr. Mitchell was using words like remission and full recovery. The final scans showed no trace of cancer, and Catherine's strength was returning rapidly. Her hair was growing back in soft waves, and the children delighted in its different texture and slightly darker color. "You look different," Charlotte observed one morning as Catherine styled her short hair for a return to public engagements. "Different how?" Catherine asked, studying her reflection. "Stronger," Charlotte said simply. "Like you know a secret that makes you not scared of things." The secret, Catherine realized, wasn't that she was no longer afraid. The secret was that she had learned fear didn't have to stop her from living, loving, or fighting for what mattered most. William, too, had been transformed by their experience. The man who had once worried about showing vulnerability in public now understood that true strength came from authenticity, not perfection. The image of him supporting Catherine during her announcement had become iconic not because it showed royal protocol, but because it showed genuine love in action. Their first joint public appearance after Catherine's recovery was at the opening of a new cancer treatment center for children. As they cut the ribbon together, hundreds of people gathered to witness not just a ceremonial moment, but a celebration of hope made manifest. In her speech that day, Catherine spoke about the unexpected gifts that can come from life's most difficult challenges. "Illness taught us that vulnerability is not weakness," she said, looking directly at William as she spoke. "Love taught us that we are strongest when we face our fears together. And hope taught us that even in the darkest moments, there's always light ahead." The final image of their journey that captured global attention wasn't from a formal ceremony or official portrait. It was a candid photograph taken by a hospital volunteer during one of their last treatment visits. Catherine was sitting in the chemotherapy chair for her final infusion, William beside her holding her hand as he had for every session. But in this picture, they were both laughing at something on Catherine's phone, probably a silly text from one of the children. Catherine's headscarf was slightly askew. William's hair was rumpled from a long day, and neither looked particularly regal or polished. But they looked happy. They looked like two people who had faced the unthinkable and emerged not unscathed, but somehow more themselves than they had ever been before. The photograph was published with the caption, "No words were needed," bringing their story full circle. From that first moment of silent support outside the hospital to this final image of shared joy, their journey had shown the world what love looked like when tested by fire. As winter approached, and Catherine prepared to fully resume her royal duties, she reflected on how profoundly their lives had changed. The illness had taken many things from them: their sense of invincibility, their certainty about the future, and their ability to take ordinary moments for granted. But it had given them something invaluable in return: the knowledge that love, when freely given and courageously received, could sustain them through anything life might bring. That quiet moment outside the hospital, when William's hand found Catherine's and no words were needed, had indeed broken hearts around the world. But in the breaking, it had also revealed something beautiful about the human capacity for connection, compassion, and hope. Their story became a reminder that even in our most vulnerable moments, we are never truly alone, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply reach for the hand of someone we love and hold on tight.